Today I want to talk about bank fishing when everything looks the same. I think that, growing up and doing a lot of bank fishing, every now and then you would run into these ponds that a lot of times they were man-made ponds where basically they were the exact same thing. Sometimes a perfect round circle or bowl with very little contour or anything, very little cover. And so anyways, in this video, I want to talk specifically about that type of pond, one that you probably fish a lot if you are a bank angler. Now, before we get into it, this video is brought to you by my apparel company, Fin Fishing. And just for a few more days, I am running a package sale. If you buy a USA made sun shirt or a pair of the all new duck shorts that are water resistant and super durable, you will get a Buzzerocks Bloodstop formula. So really cool product all by itself. If you've ever hooked a fish deep and it's bleeding, you take this thing out, you spray it on that fish, it's going to help clot that blood, and it gives the bass an 85% better chance of survival. So really cool product, and right now it can be free with the purchase of a sun shirt or a pair of shorts. So I'm gonna leave some links down below in the description. Shopping at Fin Fishing is the best way to help support this channel, and I greatly appreciate it. All right, let's talk a little bit about these ponds. One thing that I will say when it comes to these ponds, there's three main things that I really want to talk about with these type of ponds. And it doesn't always have to be a pond. Sometimes you'll fish canals. I've seen guys in Florida that fish canals that are endlessly long and don't have any changes at all to them. There's a lot of little things here and there that you may fish that are like this. So anyways, fishing when everything looks the same is what I really want to talk about. Now, the first thing when it comes to ponds, sometimes in these type of ponds, you will have little points and little corners. Little points and little corners become that much more better, if that's a word, in ponds that are like this. And I'll give you a perfect example. I fished this humongous pond like 2 years ago with my nephew down in Florida. And we were walking around this thing, and it was forever. Like, it was a really big pond. Like, you would fish this primarily from a boat if you wanted to. But we didn't have a boat. We were on vacation down spring break in Florida. And so anyways, I told my nephew, who was about 10 years old at the time, I'm like, hey, let's walk all the way down to that corner and fish that little corner, because the pond was pretty straight, but there was a subtle little corner, little bend. And I'm like, let's go down there. So we walked all the way down there, and we didn't catch anything. You were probably expecting me to say, yeah, we freaking slayed them. We didn't. So I'm like, gosh darn. So anyways, what I did is we started more or less just kind of casting and walking pretty quickly down this longer straight section, because I really thought we were going to catch them in that corner. And we continued to not catch any fish. And we were almost about to quit when there was another kind of little corner in the distance. And I told my nephew again, I'm like, hey, let's just go down there. Let's skip over this stuff and let's fish that corner. So I kind of went there with a bad attitude, thinking that we weren't going to catch one. And we got down to, again, another little subtle corner, and we caught like 15 fish. We caught like a ton of bass in this one little spot. And so I told him that day, I'm like, I don't know why I knew from the get-go we shouldn't waste time fishing those long straight sections to go to that little corner. And if we had done that twice, we would have been catching fish within about 25 minutes. Instead, we wasted about an hour and a half of our 2-hour time frame not catching fish. And so it just goes to show you, sometimes in these ponds, in these bodies of water, there will be these little corners or little points, really small points where there can be a lot of bass. And so if you can look at something from Google Earth, which is probably your best bet, you will sometimes be able to see, hey, there is just a slight corner, and it doesn't have to be a lot. It doesn't have to be like a straight 90-degree corner. Now, if it is like that, then that's a great area, because it's really going to create a funnel for bass. If you have a straight 90-degree corner, just like this, bass can literally force bait fish, bluegill, whatever may be in that pond, to an area where they can, get to them very, very easily. Same thing with a point. So always look for subtle differences in these areas. The next thing that I also want to talk about is that sometimes you don't always see these things from above your eyes, but what you will find from time to time is that there will be the most minute things in the water that hold bass on these lakes. For example, the pond that I grew up in, it was fairly monotonous, but it did have some corners here and there. But there was this one random, it was an old root that was sticking out of the ground, and it was going into the water. And I'm telling you, it was this long, right? It was this long. And I remember growing up on this pond that I would always, because the pond was very, very clear, but I would always see this root as I went by, and there were like 8 times out of 10, there'd be a bass sitting right on that root. So like you have this long section, straight, rocky, exact same thing. You have this root that sticks out literally from the ground like this much, and there'd always be a bass there. So sooner or later, I'm like, I should start casting there before I get there. You know, like me, dumb and young. Started casting there, started catching a bass. The same thing can happen in a lot of these monotonous ponds where you will catch a fish here and there in it. And the big thing that I'm trying to say is that when you catch a fish, make sure that you either mentally kind of like type that into your brain or even mark it down on some sort of map or something. Because sometimes on the bottom of these ponds, even though we can't see them, there will be just these little things like that root. Maybe it's a little log or a little brush that got blown in or whatever it may be. There is some sort of little tiny piece of cover, and bass will relate to it. I talked about this just a number of weeks ago, but I remember this one experiment that scientists did where they had like 10 or 12 fish in a big circular pool. And it was a white bottom pool, and those fish were just all over the place. One day they decided to stick a black line on the bottom of the pool. Like literally they painted a black line like this wide. All those bass that were around there just hovered right over that black line. It didn't even come up off of the bottom or anything. It was literally just a black line, but they all hovered right there around it. So just think, if a black line can do that, a little twig at times can hold some bass. And that twig may be there, or that stump or whatever it may be there for a long, long time. And that may be a place that you can come to every single time. It may look just like everything else, but there's something there that the bass really, really like. And so just, again, mentally take note of that. Now, kind of on that realm of things, like I said, I grew up on a pond, and the pond was very clear. And the one thing that I noticed for years, I mean, gosh, I lived there for 18 years of my life, however long. I lived there for a long time. I fished it all the time. If I saw one bass in that pond, there would at least be 1 or 2 really close by. Like, it was very rare that I saw one bass alone. And so when you go to these ponds, what I have found, if they truly are like a perfect circle where there's no changes in the bottom, there's no corners, there's no little subtle points, there's nothing like that, the best thing that you can do is fish as fast as you can until you catch one. And when you catch one, I mean soak that area. Because more than likely, if there is one fish there, one bass there, there's probably 2 or 3 there. And sometimes those fish are just roaming. Sometimes they're there maybe because there's a couple of bluegill in that area that they're stalking. You don't always know the reason why they're there, but you just know that they're there. So if you catch one, I mean, milk that area for all it's worth. Cast a fast-moving bait, cast a slow-moving bait, cast a finesse bait, and I'm telling you what, sometimes you can have a whole good day of fishing because you caught 4 fish back to back to back to back in one little section. And that happens a lot. So guys, that's what I do when I get to these more monotonous bodies of water that don't have a lot of change. And that's what's helped me to catch fish. So hope you guys enjoyed this one. I will see you in the next one.